Before we begin today's video, I'd like to establish two things. This video will contain lots of spoilers for this show and this manga, so if you have not read it or if you have not watched it yet, I do recommend that you go on and do that first before watching this video, because this video will discuss many of the major plot points and, character development and all that fun stuff, and I don't want to spoil it for you, because this is a work that I strongly recommend that you read or watch in your spare time. Before I get into the thematic elements of this work, I would first like to discuss the structure of it, which helps give the whole story a flow that's kind of easy to follow. The story kind of follows a loose version of the hero's journey format, which will be pictured here in its various stages. Now, the first stage that we view is the call to adventure, which pulls Legoshi from his, pretty comfortable state of being alone and shy into the real world and having to go on a quest. In his case, is atonement for nearly killing Haru. Now, I kind of skipped a bit, but his call to adventure could kind of be seen as Tem's murder, because that brings in a dark aspect of reality that was never necessarily encountered before in this world. How Legoshi reacts in view of Tem's murder and nearly committing a murder himself kind of makes Legoshi his own catalyst for this adventure. The refusal to the call to adventure essentially happens twice in this work. The first time is when Legoshi is really hesitant about even going around Haru whatsoever, immediately afterward, and even encountering her in the first place. He's very, very hesitant about doing it. Now, the second time it happens is when he goes to Gohin in the black market, where he accepts Gohin's advice to kind of steer clear of her in order to not hurt her. So his near acceptance could be considered an aspect of that refusal. So according to our handy dandy little chart here, the hero has some mentors that help them along the way in this journey. And in this story, I feel like Legoshi has two, that being Louis and Gohin. Now, Louis kind of acts as a catalyst for Legoshi to realize his motivations, because he constantly nags Legoshi for lacking personal conviction and not being true to himself, whereas Gohin constantly forces Legoshi into introspection and personal analysis as to if his motivations to be in a relationship with Haru is something that he actually wants, and if those emotions are actually true. And once he realizes that those are the actual motivations, he helps Legoshi acquire those dreams in the Shishigumi raid. This brings us to the part in the hero's journey where the main protagonist must descend into a literal or metaphorical hell and apply the skills that they've learned from their mentors and hopefully come out of that victorious. And when they come out of that victorious, like as Legoshi did, he kind of comes out of it rebirthed, as him defeating the Shishigumi boss and rescuing Haru really solidifies his convictions. However, Mrs. Itadaki's like, nah, story ain't gonna end here, which is when we get to the return. Now, on the return, Legoshi and Haru have a nice little stop by a hotel. Things get a little spicy, if you get my drift, but they don't necessarily go Legoshi's nor Haru's way. Literally, Haru throws her arm in his mouth, and it's really awkward. So Legoshi's like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. You kind of have leeway for more development there. I'll get into this later. Then you have the nice denouement at the end where, Legoshi, still not completely developed even after this quest, admits to trying to kill her, and that he does have emotions for her, which then concludes the story. Now I'd like to discuss character motivations in perspective of what I feel is the major overarching theme of this whole work, which is the prioritization of individual needs against that of the greater society. Before we start looking at the analysis of these particular characters' motivations, I would like to just categorize these characters into two groups, that being those with positive story arcs, Legoshi and Haru, and those with negative story arcs, Louis and Juno. Now, the important difference between these two is not that they just end up in a lower place than when they began, but that two of the characters, the ones with the positive story arcs, favor themselves over the society, whereas Louis and Juno have negative story arcs whose actions, as a result of their motivations and situations, pit them in favor of the society. We already kind of looked at Legoshi's motivations when we were looking at the structure of the story. However, there are a few aspects that need to be analyzed when you are looking at his personal philosophies, which drive those personal motivations of his. Now, the primary factor that drives Lugosi to being this under-the-radar sort of personality to begin with initially is his family situation. Lugosi is a 1/4 Komodo dragon gray wolf hybrid, which sounds wonky because it is. Now, his situation is that his mother, who is 1/2 Komodo dragon, began developing character traits of a Komodo dragon later in life instead of just being born with either of the two, which prompted her to have severe self-image issues, and she subsequently killed herself for it. Now, this really strained a relationship with Lugosi and his grandfather, and Lugosi somewhat blames his grandfather for it, so he's very distanced from anyone he can really care about, and that's why he's very selective when it comes to his close friends and who he's able to actually open up to. Now, although he is very strained with his grandfather, he does adopt this same philosophy of his to just kind of roll with the punches. If someone hates you, don't think twice about it. It's just the way things are, and there's nothing you can really do. So just take each day as it comes, effectively. However, this all changed when he nearly trying to kill Haru, which prompts him to go on this quest for atonement for his actions. We also do see this with his romantic pursuits on top of that, as he doesn't really care about what the society would think if he is in a romantic relationship with a rabbit, which, for those of you who do not know already, the society is very strained because of constant predation incidents between carnivores and herbivores, and Lugosi is in love with an herbivore, and he's a towering 6-foot-something gray wolf kimono dragon hybrid, and it wouldn't be very pretty, I guess you could say, in terms of how the society would perceive this relationship. So the fact that Lugosi just completely disregards it is another aspect of his grandfather's philosophy that he personally assimilated. Now on to Haru. Haru's personal philosophy stems from the fact that she has been mistreated for basically her entire life. This mistreatment is not, just verbal abuse or anything of that sort, but rather the fact that everybody or that has ever been around her has seen her as two things: an object of pity or an object of sex, essentially. Now, she has to, unfortunately, utilize the latter of those means in order to feel equal, because it's the only way that she can feel equal. That's because Mrs. Itadaki's over here is utilizing this interpretation of sex that, it's an ultimate vehicle for either personal selfishness or personal, just complete and total cessation of oneself to another individual. And in the case of Haru, she has to do this over and over and over again because individuals will not be honest to her in any other way, shape, or form, which kind of brings us to the fact as why she falls in love with Lugosi. Now, the reason why she kind of falls for him after, even though she's in a relationship with Louis to begin with, is that Lugosi doesn't see sex as a means to be honest with her. He just is. It's just a part of his character to be very candid with other people and say what he thinks. His honesty is what really opens up to Haru that, this is a potentially good and healthy relationship that she could be in. So that's why she eventually inches her way towards liking him over Louis at the end. Now we're kind of moving on to the negative story arcs, and this is where it gets really spicy, is with Louis. In terms of story, he's probably the most complex character in this entire show because of how complex his motivations probably are. Now, for those of you who do not know, he was basically just orphaned as a child and then sold onto the black market as livestock that people would come in, buy him, kill him, and eat him. Really morbid, Mrs. Itadaki, good job there. But in his case, he got out of there alive because a CEO of a mega conglomerate came in and just bought him off of it because he himself couldn't have children and he needed an heir to inherit the company after he passes away. Now, a lot of people look at this and say, hey, that's a good thing. He got dragged out of this really low, murky, desolate place and he was catapulted into the zenith of success, essentially, which he was. The issue is that you can kind of tell that he doesn't exactly want to be there. He doesn't want that to be his life, to be the Beastar or to be this mega business head, essentially. So that's why we see him kind of go off to the side and have a romantic relationship with Haru, although it doesn't work out because he admits to her that it's not going to work out and he still tries to constantly make romantic advances on her behind the scenes. But we see him use Haru as this outlet of escape of what he doesn't want it, his reality to be. However, the reason why he just doesn't sever himself completely is because he feels obliged to fulfill these roles, because it's what everybody else expects of him. The school is already coronating him to be the next Beastar ahead of time. It's just everybody knows it, the school knows it, and then his father is putting the weight of inheriting this massive corporation on his shoulders. And then you can maybe even think that there's an amount of survivor's guilt present within his motivations, that he's trying to kind of live the lives of those he knew in that market vicariously through himself, so that their lives weren't kind of in vain, that they weren't killed for no reason other than just a brief desire of some sicko. So you have a lot of different motivations, and you see those present, primarily with the school forcing his motivations on himself. When he doesn't go and pursue Haru after she's been kidnapped initially, because the mayor himself pulls him into his office and says, "You're not going to say anything about this because it would hurt the relations between everybody in this whole society," which is why Legoshi goes and does it instead. When he finally goes and pursues the Shishigumi, it's him severing his relations with the school and with society and all that great sort of the weight that they have just lobbed on his shoulders. And it's his way of saying that I'm going to do what I want to do. But at the same time, because of his interaction with Legoshi prior to that, where Legoshi says, "You're not going to do anything, so I'm going to take her for myself," he kind of goes there to die, because he doesn't have this outlet anymore of escape, because he understands if he goes there, kills the boss, and comes back, he's going to have that same load and not get any of the credit. So because now Haru is in someone else's hands and not his own, he has no ultimate purpose other than to serve the general populace. I guess what you could call him is this unwilling anti-hero of sorts. He doesn't want to be an anti-hero, but he has to be because everybody wants him to be. Last but not least, we have the other gray wolf in this show, Juno. Now, her motivations are pretty simple. She's greedy, and secondly, she wants to improve the image of carnivores in this society, which she feels are detrimented through unwarranted stigma on this commutarian sort of thinking that the general society has, that you're either in a group or you're not in a group. You know, that whole sort of classification, and she feels like she needs to bolster it in order to improve this image. Now, the reason why I put her in this category of having a negative character arc is because she doesn't get what she wants at the end. Now, she attends a school, she meets Legoshi, kind of falls for him, but although I do feel like she has legitimate feelings for him, she kind of sees him more as a tool to advance, the role and the state of carnivores in the greater society. So when Legoshi just dumps her, basically, at the Meteorite Festival after he comes home from the Shishigumi raid and helps Haru, when he dumps her there, just by herself, even after they've talked and we need to do this together sort of thing, she tells Legoshi about to be a good role model for the rest of the school and other carnivores. It throws her all the way back down the stairs of where she had grown. She had grown in popularity, she had gained a lot of friends, and then she eventually got catapulted into being the star of this whole Meteorite Festival at the end of it, because Louis just left to go fight the Shishigumi and die, and went. So when Legoshi, her last means to acquiring her goal, leaves her in the dust for his actual true romantic interest, it destroys her whole plan. So her plan being obliterated is her being kicked all the way back down the stairs of character development, right back at stage one. She didn't acquire that state, so she never really went anywhere in the first place. So that's Juno. Now, because FlipaClip will only allow me to record audio for less than 15 minutes and hardly anything over, I am going to have to do a part 2, which will be coming very soon, hopefully, after this one is made. And in that video, I will discuss how Itadaki advances emotional growth and how she marks that throughout the entire story. Thank you all for watching. If I left something out, please put that in the comments. I take constructive criticism. If you hated the video, dislike it. If you loved it to bits, like it, please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me if you did so. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a fantastic day.